and gentlemen, welcome back to the graveyard, and today I am bringing you my Necromancer subclassing PvP build, the Entity. In this build we're going to be utilizing the Gravelord, the Shadow, and the Storm Calling. With this we are going to basically be pretty fast, but at the same time we're going to be able to keep our distance and do a crap ton of damage from ranged. But at the same time, if we needed to be in close quarter combat, we can, as long as we're able to escape and get that gap between you and the enemy to then reset the fight. It's similar playstyle to an old school Sork minus the wards, but with this we're going to have some quite explosive ranged damage, so keep that in mind when we go into the skills here. Jumping into the character sheet real quick, we are 0 points into magic, surprisingly, 28 points into health, just being over that 30,000 mark. Stamina stat 36. You can adjust this if you want. You can go probably closer to the 30,000 route and then bump more into stamina if you'd like. But once we go through the rest of this build, you can be the judge of that. Recubs are looking pretty good. We got quad digits on all of them. We are using Bewitched Sugar Skulls. We have Breton as our race, but I know it seems kind of silly in this build since we're building more into stamina, but we can get more into in depth with that soon. We're using the Lover just to boost our penetration a little bit more since it does sit on the lower side, but thanks to the Gravelord passives that can go up passively, and then of course with our Major and Minor Breach. And then of course don't forget your ESO plus membership. No, I'm just kidding. Jumping into our buffed stats here real quick. Just almost 10,000 spell penetration, just almost 5,000 weapon spell damage, and then the recubs will go up of course with our back bar sets, and then everything else pretty much stays the same. Looking at the back bar here, our defense is looking pretty good. 31,000 spell and 29,000 physical, and then of course we can minimize the amount of damage by keeping our distance with Streak. Jumping into the skills here, we're going to start with the front bar, Unnerving Boneyard. This is kind of a flex spot, and I say flex spot just for the simple fact that if, and when I say if, Razor Caltrops is going to have the skill style where basically this becomes a bunch of bones. So instead of seeing all of these little, spiked razors here, this is going to look like a bunch of bones. So I will probably, depending on how it looks as far as the theme goes, I might use that. But as of right now, we are benefiting from running Boneyard, and I'll explain why when we get to our sets. But what this is going to do is it's going to give us Major Breach, Minor Vulnerability, and then of course if you hit a corpse it's going to do 30% more damage, and then your teammates can then activate the synergy to do a bit more burst damage if they want to. Detonating Siphon, this is kind of like our second spammable. A Major Savagery and Prophecy, it's going to boost our critical chance, and then of course do a pretty decent dot over time, and then some burst damage if you happen to recast this and there's enemies in that 5-meter radius. And then of course just passively having it slotted, 3% increased damage. Mass Hysteria, this is going to be our CC. Love this skill. Mass Hysteria is no cap on the amount of targets that you can terrify. It's going to also give them Major Cowardice, so while they're stunned in place they're going to have reduced weapon and spell damage, so that's going to affect their healing. Super strong, like it a lot. Venom Skull, this is our main spammable, does very good upfront damage, and then every third cast we're going to increase by 50%. And then my favorite part that they added to this skill is you are now going to have a corpse at the end of your third cast. So not only is Blighted Blastbones going to give you a corpse, but you can look forward to Venom Skull also giving you a corpse. That way you can spam your Detonating Siphon, and then while they're CC'd in Mass Hysteria, if you have some corpse around you, you can start detonating a minefield, so it's pretty cool. That's why I call this one our second spammable. Pestilent Colossus, it's kind of also a flex spot, but the reason why we're having this here is because of our front bar sets, and we will get to that here in a minute. But, it does great upfront damage. If you're able to get a couple enemies CC'd, of course, Pestilent's going to do some decent burst opportunities, especially if you combine it with Blighted Blastbones. But I like it a lot. Get Major Vuln, of course, it's always nice, and then it's a cheap ultimate too. Back bar, Temporal Guard, just for the passive Minor Protection. Ball of Lightning. So some people would prefer Streak over this. I like the immobilization snare removal effect that it gives. So not only are you going to distance yourself from the enemy, but you're also going to, you know, if you're snared or if you're immobilized in any way, you've taken a lot of pressure, you can tap this, you know, get yourself 15 meters between you and the enemy, and then maybe even a couple more times if you really want to just lengthen that gap. But basically what I do is I reset the fight always when I feel like I'm being pressured, and then I throw on my other buffs and get going. Crit Surge, this is going to be our major brutality, major sorcery, does great healing overall, easy to apply, lasts 33 seconds, very long, and then of course you're going to get healed for a little over 3,000 every time this crits, or anytime you crit, I should say. Mirage, this is going to be your minor resolve buff. Major evasion is super nice, but I like having it just for the simple minor resolve. And then of course, you know, whenever you're taking direct damage, stacking up to 100%, your dodge rolls become free. So very slept on skill. And some people, you know, they're like, there's no room on their bar for this, but the way that we're set up, this actually works very perfect because it uses magic and we're able to get stamina buffs out of it. Major evasion, minor resolve, and then of course free dodge rolling. Refreshing Path, this is going to be our major expedition on top of Streak. Some people like to use this as basically just kind of a heal, but we actually really benefit from the minor endurance and intellect, which is going to increase our stamina and magic recovery even more because of the constant dodge rolling that we're doing. And then of course a lot of our skills are a bit expensive too, so this is going to just pair nicely with our back bar set, overall keeping us keeping our resources refreshed and full. Healing Soul, kind of a, I wish it was more of a selfish heal, but unfortunately there's nothing else we can put here. I do really like the major vitality though that we get. If we do get our heal off, you know, it's such a good skill, but I do find myself many of the times giving this to somebody else and then I end up dying. I really wish that you could make a selfish heal out of this. It sucks that, you know, you can potentially give it to somebody else and then you kind of ruin the fight for yourself, but when it does hit, it's very nice, especially if it crits. That major vitality goes a long way, especially in no CP. Alright, moment of truth. Going into the skills here, we're bringing back Corpseburster. Yes, I love this set. It is so good on a Necromancer. Probably because only a Necromancer can use it, but that's not the point. What the point is, we're going to be detonating corpses, baby. I want minefields around everyone. Even though the corpse cap's at 10, there's still plenty to go around, and that is exactly what we plan on doing with this build. So, with Venom Skull being able to drop a corpse every third cast with Blighted Blast Bones, we have corpse for days. We no longer need to scribe the master class script. So what this is going to do is give you great weapon and spell damage up front. It's going to give you some crit chance, and then of course consuming a corpse is going to detonate that corpse for 7,400 magic damage. And then when you have your buff on here, it's going to go up even higher, almost 9,000. But the important thing to remember with this is when you detonate the corpse, that is going to also go with the detonating siphon burst. So you have 8,000 disease damage here when the corpse, when you trigger another corpse, it's going to detonate this on top of the magic burst from Corpseburster. So just to give you an idea here what this looks like, we're going to summon a Blast Bones here. I'm going to get this third proc going. Summon up another another proc here. So now we have 2 corpses on the ground. We'll summon a Blast Bones. That's going to detonate, and then of course when I trigger this one, that corpse is going to detonate too. Whoop, went away. Sorry about that. So they both explode. I don't know if you can see the tooltip there as far as the direct damage above the little crow's head, but once we detonate one, they both explode, doing a crap ton of damage. It's very, very nice, especially when you can fear the enemy into this and then just get all kinds of bursts going on. Very, 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 very fun. I love this playstyle. This is one of my favorite ways to play Necromancer. That's why I was so excited when Corpseburster first released, and I was ready to get a build going. We got poison damage on here just to go hand in hand with the poison with Venom Skull. Poison's very strong in PvP. It acts as basically an execute. Back bar set, Wretched Vitality. This is mostly my bread and butter on all of my builds. Mighty Chuden. This is a very last minute decision thanks to my good friend Oreo. I never intentionally wanted to use this for this build, but once I put it on and tried it, I was quite blown away by the ability to open up another bar space, another slot on my bar space. So just by having this major resolve on at all times, plus a little bit of armor from the one piece, we are able to free up our bar with other useful skills, which can help our sustain, our damage, what have you. So that's why I'm able to run a Ball of Lightning and then of course a major expedition skill. Plus these both give us very good speed and no CP, so we're able to keep our distance quite a bit. Even if we're very low health, we can just, you know, streak a couple of times, hit this with our healing soul, and then of course if there's any damage over time applying, we're gonna get healed from crit surge. It all synergizes very well. This type of playstyle, both the shadow and storm calling work very well together, especially with the passives, and we can go over the passives here in a minute. Back into the sets here, we are one piece trainee on the chest, and then of course some medium pieces of Corpseburster and Wretched Vitality, 4 medium, 2 heavy, and 1 light. And then Corpseburster ring, marking Ring of Majesty, just to get our defenses and a little bit more damage at the same time. And then Calliope Essence, that's why my character looks a bit ghost-like. Pretty awesome disguise here, just because it makes even your polymorphs do this cool effect. So that's why the original build was always the Entity, if you've followed the channel for a while, but this just adds that role-playing a little bit more, and I love the way that it makes the shade look. This is such a cool polymorph to combine with Calliope's Essence, because it just looks like a fucking demon running around, and it's badass. I wish this would stay on in PvP, but unfortunately you can't bring disguises into PvP. Jumping into our CP here, we are Master at Arms, Biting Aura, Wrathful Strikes, Untamed Aggression. Red CP, we are Pain's Refuge, Relentlessness, Survival Instincts, and Celerity. Alright, let's take a look at some of these passives here and why we're choosing Shadow and Storm Calling for our subclassing. Capacitor is going to increase your Magicka, health, and stamina recovery by 141. Good sustain right there. That's going to go well with Wretched Vitality. Energize is not super important. Unfortunately, we don't benefit from this at all. But we do increase our damage against enemies by 1% for every 10% health they have, which really lines us up for our burst. So the higher the enemy's health is, the more damage we do. But then the Necromancer passive, the lower the enemy's health, the higher our crit chance is, thanks to the Death Kneel passive. So we benefit from both ends of the spectrum with the high health and low health enemies. Jumping down to Expert Mage and then increasing our weapon and spell damage for each of our Storm Calling abilities. This is nice for on the back bar just because it's going to increase our healing a little bit more, but then we don't get anything on the front bar, but that's okay. Jumping into the Shadow here, these are pretty cool passives. Increase your magic, health, and stamina recovery by 15%. Casting a Shadow ability is going to give you Major Resolve, but we already have Mighty Chewed-in, so that's not super important. But we do get 16 seconds of this. Increase your max health by 5% for each Shadow ability slotted, so we get 5% on the front bar, 10% on the back bar. And then Dark Veil. Increase the duration of your non-invisibility Shadow abilities by 2 seconds. So we're going to increase our all of our skills: Mirage, Refreshing Path, and then Mass Hysteria. Alright guys, that is the build in a nutshell. Before I forget real quick, we are running the Tri-Stat potions from Cyrodiil. Don't forget to stock up on these. You can now buy them with AP. Very nice to have, very nice quality of life change. Definitely going to be using the millions of AP I have for this instead of having to buy pots or make them, so cool change there. I like that a lot. What did you guys think? What did you like about this build? What didn't you like? This is the Entity. It's another one of my favorites to go down in the books. I don't think I'll ever let go of this, along with the Undead Army, which I have coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. If you like summoning Blast Bones all the time, we are going to be raising the dead with the Undead Army. Peace out. Stay frosty. I'll see you in the graveyard.